In this video, we're going to talk about why your knees start to hurt as you get older, even if you're an active person or you're an athlete of some kind. We're going to talk about arthritis. We're going to talk about the hidden causes that actually make your knees hurt. And we're going to talk about what you can do to prevent your knees from getting into these creaky, achy, constantly painful states so that you can continue to enjoy your life. So if you're ready, let's get ready to think right, move right, and feel right. Previously, I made a video that talked about why people get knee pain as they get older, particularly when they are sedentary. But if you're somebody who's really active, you may feel like, well, this doesn't make sense. I'm really active. I'm playing my sports. I'm doing my activities. Why would I get knee pain? Obviously, there's something missing to your theory. So in this video, we're going to talk about some of the common reasons why active people like you and me end up with knee pain. And the answer, by the way, is not arthritis. You're an athletic person, you're starting to think, my knees are starting to go bad, and before you go down the wrong path, I want you to remember not to get caught in RIPS, R-I-I-P-S, rest, ice, injection, pills, and surgery. Instead, I want you to ATM, always think muscles, because muscles are the things that we control, those are the things that get used, those are the things that move our bones, and if the muscles are no longer functioning, the bones cannot change their position in space. If the muscles are not working together correctly around any specific joint, that joint can get creaky, cracky, make noises, and just overall not feel good. So let's look at how your athletic activities affect your muscles and how those muscles affect the health of your knees. Let's say I told you that I have this great new workout idea and all I'm going to do for the next 30 years for my upper body is bicep curls. I'm convinced that this is all I need to maintain a healthy upper body. What would you say to me? If you liked me, you might say something like, I'm not sure that's a great idea. If you dislike me, you might say something like, oh yeah, you should definitely do that, definitely. And if you're a woman, you might say, ooh, biceps. Okay, just kidding. If you're a woman, you're probably thinking, do guys really think this is the most important thing to be worried about? Here's the thing, this is just a bad plan, period, because it's putting this joint through the exact same motion over and over again and training these muscles to do just one thing and get strong at just one specific range of motion with one specific maximal contraction point. After even just a few months of this plan, I will have overtrained these muscles. After just a few months of this silly plan, I would lose range of motion and function. I'd probably get some popping and cracking in my elbow joint. These muscles that create elbow flexion would start to lose function. I would no longer be able to lengthen properly, extending the elbow, and I'd start to feel pain, probably directly in the muscle as well as at the joint. Muscles that lose access to a certain length or position will start to feel crappy once you start trying to get into those challenging positions. And if you're overtraining the same position and training a muscle to stay short and short and short, you're going to find that a lot of positions are now suddenly painful and uncomfortable. Your brain and your muscles talk to each other, and if your brain is telling your biceps, hey, we need you to lengthen, and your biceps are saying, I can't do it, you're going to have some sort of sensation that tells you, ugh, we're stuck. So what does this all have to do with your knees? Well, let's look at the sports that you're playing. Let's look at the activities that you're engaged in. Are they training a full range of motion and training strength at every length? With my bicep curl workout, I'm only training strength in this shortened length, and I'm just getting shy of actual full elongation of the biceps. So then I'm going, and training that shortened position and not getting strength at a lengthened position or any of these other lengthened positions that might be helpful for my biceps. And that's not even to mention the fact that I'm not training my triceps at all, which means the muscles that work around this elbow joint are not balanced at all. So now let's think about what sports you're doing and how that is affecting your knees. Are the sports that you're engaged in actually helping you maintain full range of motion of all the muscles around the knee joint, including the calves, including the muscles that function into the ankle, your tibialis anterior, your quads, your hamstrings, your adductors, your hip muscles? Is your sport adequately challenging all of these muscles in a balanced way so that you have strength at every length for all of these muscles? Well, let me help you. The answer is no. Yes, I know you may run when you play soccer or basketball or softball, or whenever your boss comes out of her office and looks like she has some new assignment for you and it's almost lunchtime, and so you get to the door as fast as you possibly can. But the reality is, running does not take any of your joints through a full range of motion. It does not take any of the muscles in your legs to full lengthened or fully shortened positions. And so you are constantly training that same limited range of motion over and over again. That's not to say that running isn't good for you. It's just that running is not going to maintain your mobility or the health of the muscles and the function of the muscles that will keep your knees feeling good. When you run, you are getting hip extension, assuming you're doing it well, which a lot of you are not. You're also training that front landing leg to be able to absorb the impact a little bit as you move forward. And that is going to train some of the muscles around the knee to be a bit stronger in that specific landing position. But none of that means that your hip flexors and your quads and your butt muscles and your hamstrings and your calves and ankles are all going to have a full range of motion that you can access and use whenever you need it. So once you suddenly find yourself in a slightly tweaked position, your knees might feel bad. And the more you run, if you keep stiffening up and tightening up and losing access to ranges of motion in these muscles, you may find that just like me and my elbow, your joint is not feeling so good. What about golf? Golf is an easy one. You're not going through a full range of motion with your knees. You're keeping them a little bent, that's cool, and then you swing through, that's cool. But what are you doing? First of all, this is extremely asymmetrical. It's all to one direction, and you're not really doing any kind of range of motion with the knee joint. It's basically from slightly bent to maybe straighter, and then that's it. You cannot tell me that 15 degrees of motion is going to maintain the health of your knees, and it's definitely not going to maintain the strength of the muscles around your knees. Yeah, but I have to walk when I golf. I don't use the cart, so obviously that keeps my knees healthy. Hey, I want to say a big thanks to Chris, Marilyn, Sanjay, DK, Bjorn, and to Connie for your support of the Upright Health channel. If you want to support this channel too, then please hit that thanks button or use the PayPal link that you'll find down below. Now let's get back to your knees. No. Walking alone does not keep your knees necessarily healthy and strong. When you walk, it's again a very limited range of motion that's involved at the knee joint. And the muscles in your leg are really not getting that much of a challenge when you're walking. That's kind of the hallmark of walking. It's a low intensity, low difficulty exercise, so your muscles don't actually have to work that hard to walk, especially for the short distances that most people are walking. Now in golf, yes, you may have to walk a pretty good distance, but you're not really going through a full range of motion. You're not testing the muscles around your knees. You're not forcing the hamstrings to do all that much work. You are using a little bit of this, hopefully, if you are using the right muscles. But most people, especially when carrying a bag, are going to be limping around, not using hip extension. And if you're going at a slow pace, you can also just dawdle along and do this, which is not going to be good for anything. Because walking is just a low intensity way to get from point A to point B, you can limp while doing it. You can make all sorts of compensations that allow you to cheat the muscles of your hips and legs and feet. And all of that means that you are not doing something to keep these muscles strong, and you will over time atrophy them and lose range of motion and control. All that said, walking backwards can actually be a helpful way to build some knee strength, and you can incorporate that easily into your life if you want to do something that's going to help your overall knee health and comfort. But again, walking backwards alone is not going to put you through a full range of motion and doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the strongest, healthiest knees for whatever activity you're trying to participate in. What about a sport like basketball where I'm running, sprinting, jumping, and doing all kinds of stuff side to side? A sport like basketball is getting closer to giving you a good balanced range of motion, but even Michael Jordan would never do the Asian squat in the middle of the game or practice because it's not useful to test his knee and hips and ankles to get into this position, because what is he going to do from here? The side-to-side cutting, the sprinting, jumping off one leg, then the other leg, that's all really great. But again, if all of the range is happening up here and you're never having to get low, you're never having to get into deeper positions with the knee, you're never having to coordinate motions that really test knee and hip range of motion, you're going to lose access to those positions, and that's going to translate to your knees not feeling so good. And finally, let's talk about weightlifting, because people often have two big misconceptions about weightlifting. The first is that weightlifting is bad for you because you are grinding your joints. I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think there's been any studies that show any correlation between weightlifting and the bones actually grinding away and then people having pain and losing range of motion. There are a lot of people who have lifted weights for a long time who have lost range of motion, who have pain in their joints, and I think that's because of what we've already talked about, which is muscle function being lost because you're being too repetitive about what you're doing. So the second big misconception people have is that doing the standard lifts of just deadlifting and then squatting all day is going to do all you need to maintain healthy knees. And the fact is, squatting and deadlifting alone are not going to maintain perfectly healthy, strong knees, especially when done in a powerlifting fashion. And the fact of the matter is, squatting and deadlifting alone are not going to maintain healthy knee range of motion and function, because you're doing the same thing I was trying to do with my bicep curls. You're constantly training the same range of motion with maximum contraction at the same point every time, over and over and over again. And that's just going to cause stiffness, that's going to cause loss of range of motion, and your knees are not going to be happy about it. Man, is there anything I can do to keep my knees healthy? So now I want to give you two important things to think about to keep your knees healthy. The first point is to build strength at every length. So when you are thinking about your knee function, remember that you want to be able to stretch out the muscles that allow for range of motion at the knee joint. A lot of people, like weightlifters, can often be really stiff in the quads and they can't even get a full knee bend because those muscles don't know how to lengthen. You want these muscles to be able to lengthen and also express strength at that lengthened position. Strength at every length. So you should incorporate stretching, but also make sure that when you stretch, you're also using contractions and testing the strength and building the strength of those muscles at that lengthened position. The same goes for the hamstrings as well as the inner thigh muscles. All the muscles around your hip and into your leg, including your calves, your tibialis anterior, all of those muscles need to have strength at multiple lengths and positions. So if you have some muscles that are really short and you're like, oh, I can't get them to lengthen at all, you need to be working on lengthening them and teaching them to be stronger in that lengthened position so that you can actually control that lengthened position and eventually do certain normal things like touching your toes. So the second big point that you need to remember to keep your knees healthy is you got to work for it. You want to move out of your parents' house? You got to work for it. You want a new car? You gotta work for it. You want six-pack abs? You gotta work for it. If you don't mind becoming increasingly more decrepit and feeble over time, then don't work for it. But if you want to be able to keep participating in the sports that you love, you're gonna want to work for it so that your knees keep feeling good. Wait, but what about arthritis? Medical doctors have long blamed knee pain on arthritis, and they've blamed arthritis on aging. The fact of the matter is, study after study shows that there is no link to what you see in an x-ray and somebody's actual pain or mobility. Even people who have the worst bone-on-bone knee joints in x-rays don't necessarily have pain and don't necessarily have any range of motion issues. There are people walking around right now who have bone-on-bone in their x-rays in their knees who have no pain and no range of motion problems, and there are people who have nothing wrong in their x-rays who have pain and range of motion problems. Study after study shows that this medical mythology is total garbage. But this mythology persists because, hey, there's very expensive treatments available that have already become standard practice. Surgical device manufacturers make a ton of money to keep pumping out the little tools and devices that support these surgeries. Elective surgeries like orthopedic surgeries generate a ton of revenue for hospitals. And everybody wants to hear that it's not their fault and that somebody else can fix the problem for them. It's a very tough pill to swallow that your knee problems are your own fault, because it also means Your knee problems are yours to solve. On the flip side, this should also be very encouraging because it means you have total control over what's going on with your knee joint. You can build the muscle around your knee, build these muscles, train these muscles to restore function so that your knee suddenly feels good and you can keep doing the things that you love doing. The alternative is to just throw up your hands and wait till your knees feel bad enough that you are a candidate for surgery, which may or may not work. And almost definitely will not give you the strength to do the things you want to do as you get older and older, because surgery doesn't build any strength in your muscle. If you're ready to start the process of fixing your own knees, then check out these videos right here. If you want to support this channel, use the thanks button or the PayPal link down below. I promise I will not use your money to pay for a knee replacement surgery. Like, share, and subscribe with notifications on, and as always, I hope you remember that pain sucks, life shouldn't.